Hey guys, I'm Helena. Since we've known each other for quite a few months now, just a little recap of who I am. My name's not Helena Capet. This is the name of my channel, it's not my actual name. Capet is actually a nod to my actual name. But Helena, I don't really know how I got this idea. But just to be clear, I'm German, I'm not French. I have got some French blood in it, but it's so little that it's probably like from Napoleon times. It's that far back, it's that little. So I'm not actually French, it comes from my father's side. A bit from my mother, but mainly from my dad. So I'm not French, I'm mostly German. There's a bit of other stuff in there according to a DNA test that my mom and I took. Which was quite enlightening. Let's say it like this. Also a bit sad because we thought a long time that we had Norwegian blood in ourselves and came out that we're Swedish. There's like no Norway whatsoever, which is kind of sad because, I don't know, if you watch as much biathlon, like where they run and shoot in the winter, as we do, then being Norwegian is a good thing. Especially when like the Bø brothers were still in the race. Just saying. Unfortunately they're not anymore, so I suppose it's not that bad not being Norwegian, but never mind. So this was our daily rant of winter sports, which is gonna start in a few weeks again. Yay. Wow, great, it's cold outside. Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about father figures, which is obviously a huge thing with Wagner. Also, I'm again sick because why not? And I got my favorite Bridgerton flask so I can drink whenever I need it. Okay. It's always cold outside and I'm always sick in winter. It's not pretty anymore. Anyway, father figures. Again, there's a lot of father figures. Also, we're right now determining who a father figure is because we have fathers, and we have father figures, and we have people who would be old enough to be someone's dad, but who are not. Which means I'm keeping the Dutchman out of this, because he does not really behave like a dad, hopefully. Yeah, you know what I mean, you get what I mean? Dutchman's out. People like Hans Sachs are in, because he held Ava when she was a child. And he saw her grow up. And I think we're gonna puke now. Anyway, so this is what we're gonna talk about today, next week. And with next week for you, it's for me, it's gonna be after this episode, it's gonna be mother figures. And if you know, you know. Again, mother figures are not really there. Let's be real. It's like preliminary nurses and one stepmother. So there's not much to say there. So we're going to start off with the father figures. I'm going to start off. Also, we're going to do a ranking in the end, which, okay, like what will our ranking be? Does not sell his daughter off to some guy? Probably, honestly. If there is even one. Is there one guy, is there one father who does not sell his daughter off? We'll find out. So, let's start with the Dutchman. Again, the Dutchman, although he would be old enough probably in the original production, since he's about 200 years old, to be like Senta's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, I don't know. We're not counting him in because he does behave fatherly. Well, there are some fathers who behave like that, but we're not talking about that now. Yeah, anyway. So we're talking about Dalan preliminarily, and we know that he is very much about his money. I mean, I get it some way, because he says, oh yeah, you're gonna be rich if you marry him. I can understand it that he wants his daughter to be well suited and that she has a lot of money to work with, and that she has a stable home and everything. But considering that he only said that after he sold her off to the Dutchman in this, oh yeah, you've got money, here's a picture of my daughter kind of way, which is again really disturbing. I always think like we shouldn't talk too much about this stuff because it's so disturbing if you really think about it. I mean, we could honestly make a criminal investigative video about the magic flute and we wouldn't come to an end of it, and no one of you would ever get that child again into the magic flute. I don't get why people take their child into the magic flute. I honestly don't. If you really think about it, no way. My child is not going to see this if I ever have one. Okay. Anyway, back to the Dutchman. He sells Dutchman. Darland sells his daughter off to the Dutchman, as we know. Well, considering that there's not really an understanding between Eric and Senta. I mean, we know that Eric's madly in love with Senta. It's kind of obvious at this point. And he also makes it very obvious. But I don't know whether Darland just doesn't know it, really, or if he just doesn't care because he's not well suited enough for his daughter. But, well, it's kind of an open secret that Eric's in love with Senta and they're as good as engaged. If you look at the first scene of, well, it's the second scene. I always say the first scene of the second act, but since it's run through and there's 3 scenes instead of 3 acts, at the beginning of the second scene, when they say, oh yeah, we know that she's not into sailors, like, we know that she's more into huntsmen, wink wink, like, people. So Senta is kind of, it's an open secret. Don't know if Darland is really, I don't think he cares, honestly. I think he only sees, hey, this guy has money. I have a daughter. He's not married. My child could use money. And I would get money out of this. Yay! Wonderful. Like, people, honestly. Anyway, so this is Darland. Sells off his daughter. Does not really care about her feelings. I mean, well, he does in a way of he's asking her if she wants him, but, well, she could have said, no, I'm not gonna marry this guy. This wouldn't have looked good for him. But since he already kind of has this contract with the Dutchman beforehand, it doesn't really matter at this point. But he still asks her, which is nice. And considering what kind of father figures are still coming on, this is probably one of the better ones. Yay! Okay, so this was the Flying Dutchman. Go on to Tannhäuser. So let's look into Tannhäuser. So we have got a lot of guys who feel like father figures of Elisabeth. Nicht des Landgrafen. Yeah, but we got, yeah, that's the thing. I knew it that there was something. Because she's not the daughter of Hermann, but she is the niece of him. But I'm gonna count him still as father figure. This is why I said father figure. We also gonna have one in Lohengrin. We're not gonna have a father in Lohengrin, but we have a father figure. So, again, Hermann, yeah, well, singing contest and a woman as a prize. Yeah, well, can't really say anything about this. I don't really know because, as you know, like Tannhäuser and Parsifal are my least favorites, and when I see Tannhäuser, it's mainly the Venus scenes, and when I watch Parsifal, it's mainly the second act. So I'm not as well versed in those as I am like with the others, if I may compliment myself on this. I'm not really complimenting myself on many things, but like Wagner, yeah, complimenting myself on that. Anyway, so yeah, it's not really he sells his niece off, basically. And for all the Tannhäuser fans out there, like, drag me in the comments, tell me what's wrong. If you don't tell me what's wrong, by the way, then I'm gonna assume that I'm right. Just saying that. So, we're already coming to Lohengrin because we're gonna have the Tannhäuser situation later on, because, as you know, Tannhäuser and Meistersinger are kind of these siblings. Meistersinger is kind of the frolicking younger sister of Tannhäuser. But first of all, we're gonna come to Lohengrin, and again, we don't have a father, but because honestly, if they did have a father, the whole thing wouldn't come up. That's what it is. I'm sorry. If the Duke was alive, there would be no question about who was gonna be Duke. It's a thing. So, who we have is Heinrich der Vogler, obviously, the king, and yeah, we have this kind of, and this is again my personal opinion, because everything on this channel is my personal opinion. That's why you're here. You're just gonna watch some German student ramble about Wagner. I personally still think, as someone who's not Catholic, as someone who's not Christian at all, I'm pagan, as you know, as someone like that, like, if a guy comes in a carriage drawn by a swan and says, yeah, you're not gonna ask me who I am and where I came from, then I'd be like, yeah, like, for real? And if he says, oh yeah, also, like, I'm gonna fight for this girl and I'm gonna defend her before the biggest fighter that you have, and I'm gonna basically bury him with my sword, and after this I'm gonna marry this girl, then I'd be like, yeah, no. But this is the thing with Heinrich der Vogler. If we go with a conventional production where Lohengrin is actually a good guy and Ortrud's the bad one, which I don't believe, if we go through that, then we say, oh, it's so kind of King Henry to believe this guy and to help him and to say, welcome in our community. Of course you can marry her. This is great. You're wonderful. Yay me. Cool. If we have, like, not such a close mind and we say, are we actually going to believe this guy? Then we're like, okay, Henry gives this girl away to someone he doesn't know. He doesn't know the name, he doesn't know where he came from. We only know that he's basically an animal abuser because he came with a carriage drawn by a swan, and later we learn that the swan is actually a child, which makes it child abuse. And then it's getting more problematic. Let's take it like this. And this is also why we should all keep questioning things. Like, not basic things, people. I mean, the big things in the world, the big things that go on in politics, I don't know. But, like, not basic things. We're not going to question that the grass is green, people, okay? There's an end to this. But we should question the big things. We should question the media. We should question the politics. Just saying. Because it could be a Lohengrin situation where they say, oh yeah, but we're so good and we are believing that, and because we believe that it's right. And everyone's like, yay! Yeah, no. Just saying that. Always question people who say such stuff. Anyway, so again, Heinrich depends on the production. Depends entirely on the production. If he's a good dad and just sells his... What is she? Is she his niece? I don't really know. She's something. His daughter figure. If he just sells her off to some guy who is an animal abuser and a child abuser, or if he actually is able to see the Christian, the Jesus, the, I don't know, the savior in Lohengrin, and he's correct and he gives Elsa to Lohengrin. Yeah, it's really as simple as that. It comes down to the production. If we look at the like, I always say the current production of Bayreuth, because it's the one that's still on and they don't have a new one yet. By the way, Bayreuth, I have like asked them for tickets for like 2 months, 2 months ago, and I still haven't gotten anything that like said if I got the tickets or not. Like I had alternatives. So also I'm with friends of Bayreuth, so I hope something comes there. Just saying, if anyone from Bayreuth sees this, remember me. Anyway, again, Heinrich, entirely the production. The current production of Bayreuth, as I said, is very questioning, and yeah, we're in that thing again. But since the staff of Lohengrin was very Jewish, with Yuval Sharon and Neo Rauch and Rosa Loy, they kind of made this, I don't want to say Ortrud favoring production, but I am going to say it. It's an Ortrud favoring production because she is, of course, deemed one of the Jewish knight figures, because as we all know, Wagner was a communist as well as an anti-Semite. Because just for the people who think that anti-Semitism is a purely radical right thing, which is not. It's on all sides. It can come from everywhere, basically. But they made this very Ortrud favoring production, so she's kind of the only one who sees through this, I'm gonna say it, BS. She's the only one who sees that. So in this case, Heinrich seems very, very foolish to just give her away. Okay, next one. Tristan und Isolde. So, since we don't have, and this is the first time that we actually have a father figure for a guy, because this is not normal with Wagner. It came only in the later things. As you know, the Dutchman, Tannhäuser and Lohengrin, they are the pre-exile works of him. He wasn't even present when Lohengrin was first on stage. He was already exiled at this point. So now we're post-exile, and we're not talking about operas anymore. It always bugs me to say operas. I'm sorry. I know enough Italian to know that Italians will probably cover their heads and sigh and scream and cry when I say operas. I normally say opera, but my lecturer said that operas is the correct term. Anyway, we're not talking about operas anymore. We're talking about the rest, the best of the rest. So, Tristan and Isolde, first time that we have a father figure for a guy. So this is obviously also based on the fact that this was there before, as was the most of the others. So Tristan, as you know, Wolfram von Eschenbach, so he did not really change that much. But we have König Marke as Tristan's kind of father. Again, not actually father, but as a kind of father for Tristan. Yeah, let's say, as you know, I'm not really so much in favor of, oh god, I can't sit anymore. And that after 20 minutes. Anyway. Tristan, I don't really like Tristan as much as I probably should. But I think that in this case, and this is one of the first cases, and might be because we have now a guy having a father figure, but this time the father is more of in a passive. He has got a passive moment. It's more Tristan that's active. Unlike in the previous ones when we had girls who were more passive and their father figures who were more active. So in this case, We have obviously Make, who's very, very passive. He doesn't really even want to marry Isolde. He only marries her because Tristan's like, if you don't marry her, then I'm gonna go. Which is like, and then the king says, yeah, okay, if it has to be, then I'm gonna marry this beautiful young woman. What you do for your sons. Anyway. Again, König Make is here more of in a passive role. He only really gets on stage in the end of the second act when he discovers that Tristan deceived him and that he had platonic people, that he had a platonic relationship with his wife, Make's wife. But again, Make is not really active in that. He's not the one who says, yeah, I'm gonna kill you right now, or kill him on the spot. This is not what Marcus says. He says, you've hurt me so much. How could you do this? So it's all about Tristan. It's not really that much about Make himself, which is very rare if we see it compared to the earlier versions. And by earlier versions, I mean the Dutchman, Tannhäuser and Lohengrin. And this probably makes him for one of the better father figures, but I think we have to compare here between father figures for women and father figures for men, because it's very, very different, obviously. Because the women get sold off most of the time. And by most of the time, I mean like every single time. Just saying. So, Make is really one of the better ones, and he's like, when Tristan gets hurt by Melot, and he is like, they take him away to, well, the castle that he grew up in, and Isolde travels after him. Then he travels after Isolde to say, you can have her. Which, of course, you could say, it's too late, people. It's simply too late. We don't know exactly how much time was even in between this. I'm sorry, I have to get my hot water bottle because I don't know why. I can't sit anymore. Anyway. Oh, this is much better. Anyway. So, we don't know how much time has passed between the second and the third act of Tristan, considering that it is both a natural wound that Tristan has, but also the unnatural wound that Isolde is not by his side and he's only ever able to die when she is by his side. We don't know how much time has passed. It could be that Tristan was, well, taken away, well, probably the same day, and then the same night then Isolde came after him, and when they found out the next day, then König Make immediately ran after her. Could be when he calmed down and said, oh yeah, maybe this was not good how this happened, and I'm gonna go after them and give Isolde to my son figure. Could be that way. Could also be that it's like months and months and months and months. It's a possibility. Could have been earlier. He could have sent, yeah, well, can't really because it's all overseas, so I suppose that every ship, I don't know, I don't know it good enough, like the seas and ships and stuff and the times to know if it would have been faster to just send someone with like a quick note, hey Tristan, gonna give my wife to you, XOXO marker, I don't know. Could have been faster. But again, at this point there was nothing really to save anymore. Also, König Make, well, he doesn't believe Melot initially that this is going on. but he mistrusts Tristan enough to still wait and not say, Milord, you're out of your mind. There's nothing going on between my son and my wife. It's not happening. And yeah, so we got this kind of dynamic. All in all, I think Mark is one of the better ones, but this could again be because there's a guy with a father figure and not a woman with a father figure. And let's get again to a woman with two father figures. And if you want to puke, this is the time, because we're going into Meistersinger. And you know I love Meistersinger. Actually, like in these sometimes very dark times politically, I just love watching Meistersinger because there's not that much bad going on, and it's just fun, as long as you like don't watch the old version of Meistersinger from Bayreuth, because if you watch that as a German, you just want to die of shame, honestly. Let's be real. But let's go to Meistersinger. So as we know, Eva has two kind of dads. She has one who's of course a real dad, which means that we only have our second real dad. Just remember that. It's only the second time that we have someone who's biologically her father after Senta in the Dutchman. So we have Veit Pogner, who of course has again the singing contest and Eva's first prize. But what is really great, and with really great, it's really like it would be the bare minimum for us today, but it was not back then. It was not at all back then. It's actually really nice that he said if she doesn't want him, then she can say no, and she just can never marry again. So this is kind of what we have in Midsummer Night's Dream. The same thing when Hermia's dad says to her, girl, you're gonna marry Demetrius, or you're gonna go into a cloister, and you're never gonna come out of it again. And by cloister, I mean Diana, goddess of hunt, if you don't know. Which is kind of weird because it's set in Greece, but they like take on the Roman names. Never mind. Not talking about Shakespeare now. I have to write about him enough. So, Meistersinger. But this is actually an almost very nice thing compared to what we had at this point. So he's actually as nice as Darland was in The Flying Dutchman, because he says she can choose ultimately if she wants him or not. Which Beckmesser of course doesn't like. Let's be real. Beckmesser does not like that. But obviously Hans Sachs helps in this moment, because he says, yeah, but if you don't want her to choose, like, we should have the whole city coming in, and they should decide with us, along with us, who is the winner of this contest. And then they're like, no, we cannot let the people down below help us in this decision. This is not happening. We would rather have this virgin saying no to this. And then Hans Sachs is like, okay, if you want Eva to have the last word, then like, okay, then it's not really what I wanted. Of course, it's what he wanted. He just had a more extreme approach to get them be okay with a lesser extreme. So Veit is actually more of a better father, because he actually wants to let her choose. She's still object in a singing contest, but at this point the bar is so low, we're glad about. He asked her. Yay. Woohoo. Anyway, so the other father figure, and this is our time to puke, is of course Hans Sachs. And as we said, like in the earlier relationship video, I get it, okay? I get it where Eva goes through, and that she says, I want to be married, I want to have children, I want this married life, I just don't want it with Beckmesser, and Walter will not be able to sing properly within one day. He won't learn it. So let's go to someone who would treat me right, and who would be able to make me happy, and where I wouldn't be repulsed, basically, every time I look at him. So I get that. But it's still horrible. I mean, let alone if we look at that sentence where he said, then I would have a wife and a child in one. Ah! People! Really? I mean, I get it. I mean, Hans Sachs is the good one. Yes, I get it. But still, this sentence, why? Why? Isn't it horrible enough that he carried her around when she was a child, and that he saw her grow up into this beautiful young woman, as he says himself. Like, why? Why did he say that? Why did he have to say this? I have a wife and a child in one. Why? Please. Anyway, this was our rant of the day. Just saying. Because it's... the way that Wagner wrote it obviously makes us feel that Hans Sachs is the good one, and he is. But this is still creepy. And as a girl with a father, Viech. And if you don't say Viech now, you should let yourself be checked. Just saying. But there might be something for you later. Anyway. So this is very, very, very utterly concerning, but in the end, he has this beautiful thing where he says, I know a sad tale of Tristan and Isolde, but I was more intelligent and I didn't want anything of the luck and of the joy of König Marke, of being married to Eva. She, of course, she has this whole creepy thing going on where she says, yeah, in any other way I would have married you over anyone else, but I unfortunately fell in love with a guy at my age, so I'm gonna marry him instead. Funnily enough, we will have something like this later with the mother figures. And with later, I mean for you next week. Because I just give you this to think about, like right here. Magdalene is much older than David. And I'm gonna leave it at that. And she's a nurse, and he's a boy. Basically, like 16 years old. And she's in her late 30s. Yeah, just think about that till next week. It's your homework. I'm assigning homework now. So, again, Hans Sachs is probably, yeah, this was my problem with putting Hans Sachs in it, because he is very, very obviously a father figure, but he is seen more, he's seen both as a father figure as a romantic partner. So are we going to say that he is a good dad, good father figure, because he doesn't sell Ava off? Probably not. So he's kind of out of the ranking, because he's just the secondary father figure, and Ava doesn't see him as such. He sees himself as such. But I think she sees him in the beginning maybe as a father figure, but then when the topic of husband comes up, it changes. Yay, wonderful. Anyway. The Ring of the Nibelung. So, we have a few father figures in this. Preliminarily, we don't have one in the Rheingold. Because at this point, they're still just siblings. They're, if we talk about the current, still breaks my heart, the current production of Bayreuth, which will not be played anymore. Then we have this kind of 4-generation thing. So in the first generation, we only have like siblings. There's no children at this point. Well, we have the children in the beginning, but this could be another video. Yeah, you know what? No, we're gonna talk about it now. So we don't know whether the children at the pool in Wotan's backyard on his property are his children. They just have the same hair color as he does, which normally means, if we look at his other children, that they are very, very likely to be his children. But the golden child has, as we all know, dark hair. But considering that he still sits around there, he could be actually Wotan's child. So if we look at that, and this is purely the current production. So if we look at that, then Wotan would be the worst dad ever. And he probably will be. But if we look at this production, he's the worst dad ever, because he sees how his brother takes his child away, and then later he gives the child as payment. On the other hand, he wanted to give his sister-in-law as payment. So, could be something. And then he wanted to keep his son and instead give his daughter away. And that doesn't work, but he doesn't really care about the daughter anyway. Just have this father-mother-daughter thing with Erda. So, not a good dad. Not in any way, shape or form. And we're gonna stay preliminarily with Wotan for the ring, because there's, other than Mime, we have Mime later. But otherwise, and Alberich. Mime and Alberich. But otherwise there's not really that many father figures in this. But we're going to go to the Valkyrie. As we all know, in the Valkyrie, Wotan gets to be Father of the Year, as so many others. Because, as we all know, he stays with Sieglinde until she's a certain age. Then he goes with his son into the woods, and he knows that he will never see his wife slash, I don't know, side piece properly, because Fricka is his wife, that he's never going to see his side piece again, that she's going to be murdered, and that Sieglinde is going to be abducted. And that he is basically throwing her into this very, very horrible life, just that she is ultimately desperate enough to run away and sleep with her twin brother. So he knows what he's doing to her. And again, considering that we are basically at a time when girls were sold off as soon as they were bleeding. If you know, you know. Unfortunately, women do. Well, then we can say that Sieglinde was probably married off to Hunding, who was apparently like 60 or 70, whatever, when she was about 12 or 13 years old. So Wotan saw this and was like, okay, it has to be done. Yes, he goes to her and says, oh yeah, by the way, this is a sword, and this is a tree. I'm gonna stuck the sword in the tree, and only the best can get it out. So, yeah, wonderful, great. Father of the Year again. And then later, obviously, we have Sieglinde, who is desperate enough to go with Siegmund and to have his child. And then, and this is what I personally think, because as we all know, that Wotan is the god of war and wisdom and magic. So we have Brynhilde, his daughter, being the embodiment of the war, not of the war, of the wisdom. I'm so stupid. Of the wisdom, because she's also Erda's daughter. And then we have Siegmund, who's like this embodiment of war. So this would leave for Sieglinde the magic. So, as we know, when we meet Siegmund and Sieglinde again in the second act, Siegmund says, yeah, we were just so great together. Sibling is just wonderful. And you got this weird look in your eyes and you ran away. So what I think is that Sieglinde knew. Sieglinde knew that her brother would die, and she kind of had this, not this flashback, but this magical something that she saw what was going on, and that her brother had to die because of her and the adultery, her infidelity towards her husband, and that was why she ran away. So Wotan deceived them again, which is of course his personality. If you look at the old sagas, this is his thing. He deceives people. You never know whether he's on your side or not. And he's my favorite god. Great. Not my favorite goddess, but my favorite god. Was born on his day, Wednesday. Anyway, so he deceives her / them again. And then later when, well, Sigmund is killed and Sieglinde is on the Rock of the Valkyries, then he wants to find her and either kill her, kill the child, whatever. So Wotan's really getting the Dad of the Year award, and I think we might say that he's gonna take the crown on this one. And this was only Sieglinde. So with Sigmund, obviously, he had a much closer thing going on. They were much closer, as it was just at this time that fathers and sons were. But he also left him alone. And as we know, Sigmund has a very, very different approach to law and order, because he says if a woman is unhappy in her marriage, then she shouldn't be married, which is, by the way, something that he inherited from Wotan, because Wotan says almost exactly that. He says, why should a marriage be binding when they're not happy? This is something that Sigmund inherited, but in a world that is so much on law and order and on this thing of selling women off to some guy who they don't love, this is disruptive. This is utterly disruptive. And Wotan kind of throws Sigmund into this life where he knows that Sigmund won't fit in. He doesn't have it as hard as Sieglinde because he's a man, and he can get out of trouble much more easily than she can, because he's simply physically stronger, as most men are. But still, I always think Sigmund and Sieglinde are much more tragic and much more heroic in the same moment than Brynhilde and Siegfried later, because they had to fare in the world on their own. So, and I don't know, do we think that Wotan knows? Do we think that Wotan thought far enough in advance that he was like, oh, if Sieglinde is married and Sigmund and Sieglinde commit adultery, will I have problems with my wife, who's the goddess of marriage? My favorite goddess, by the way. Do we think it goes that far? Because if it did, it would be even worse. But, well, and obviously Wotan is, maybe not immediately, because obviously immediately he wanted to shield Sigmund. But in the end he was like, okay, good, we're gonna kill off Sigmund because he's done his duty. Sieglinde is pregnant. So in this moment we have either the kind of passive murder of Sigmund, where Wotan, well, destroys the sword of Sigmund, which, when Hunding is able to kill him, or we have the active thing, which we had in the current production in Valhalla again, where he actually shoots his son. Again, Father of the Year. It's really getting great. Yay. Wonderful. And it's going on because he has a third child. Yay. So, of course, at this point, we have the feeling in the beginning that Wotan has actually been a good dad to Brynhilde, as far as you are what I want and you're gonna do what I want thing. Okay? So this is kind of why they have such a good relationship, because she does everything he wants and she doesn't question it. As soon as she does question it, he gets violent. And ultimately, of course, even though she did what he wanted, what he first wanted and what he really deep down wanted, for Sigmund to survive and for her to fight for him, he gets her in the situation where he basically sells her off beforehand. As in, he says, I'm going to bind you to this rock, you're going to sleep, and the first guy who comes here can rape you, can wake you, and can marry you. Yeah, well, I think we're going to know who takes the crown for the worst father figure. And then he gets, obviously, because she's still his favorite child, then he is like, yeah, okay, good. I'm gonna have this fire all around you and only the best can get through it. Which means Siegfried. Which is also kind of weird. But never mind. Obviously, for all the guys who have been missing the incest since Meistersinger, we have in the current production this kind of incestuous relationship between Brunhilde and Wotan, and we are not going to talk about this, and also about like the fact that Sieglinde is pregnant and that Wotan is much more interested in her than Hunding. Yay! Why do I love this production? Because it's brilliant. Anyway. Yeah, anyway. Also, we can never forget, and this is kind of why I love Waltraute as a rose so much in Götterdämmerung. We can never forget that at the time when the Valkyries leave, that Wotan says, no one of you should come back or you will have the same fate, suffer the same fate as your sister. So they think they go in with the knowledge that their sister is gonna be there and kissed and raped and waked and married off. And that they will suffer the same fate, ultimately, if they come back without the fire. And this makes Waltraute so much more heroic. This might be a thing for in 2 weeks. Heroes. Could be nice. Anyway. So, again, Wotan is not Father of the Year. And then we go into Siegfried, because it can even get worse. Yay! Great, because we have Mime and he wants to kill his son. Actively. Wow. Great. And he probably killed his mother. Which we don't know. So this might be or might not be. Obviously we don't know if Mime actually kills Sieglinde, but considering that he is pointed out by Wagner personally that he's one of the bad guys along with Eiberich, they are the bad guys. Funnily enough, do you remember that Loge says that he and Mime and Eiberich were cousins? So there's a bond there. So we know that Loge is also one of them, of the bad guys. Not initially, but he's in the same corner. Anyway. So Mime, as we all know, he just wants the Rheingold, aka the ring, and he knows that Siegfried is the one who will and has to get it, and after Siegfried has got it, he's gonna kill him. Or the better solution would have been that Fafner and Siegfried kill each other, so Mime had nothing to worry about. So, ultimately, obviously, Mime gets killed by Siegfried, because Mime wanted to kill Siegfried. So, Siegfried kills Mime because Mime wanted to kill Siegfried. Yay! So, I don't know, is he worse than Wotan or not? I think he is, because he actually wanted to kill his son. On the other hand, there was never really that much of trust between them in the first place. Siegfried made it very, very clear that he hated Mime. But never mind. So, Then we come to the probably best father in in the Ring of the Nibelung, which is horrible to say that, which is Alberich, because he actually seems to have some sort of good connection with Hagen. He doesn't sell him off. He doesn't want to kill him. He just wants to use him, basically. Which makes him the best in the ring. Oh god. Where have we come to? Again, Alberich and Mime, not the greatest relationship. Alberich and Mime. Alberich and Hagen do not have the greatest relationship, but it's the best, like, father-son relationship that we have in the ring. It's actually very nicely done in the current ring production of Bayreuth, as we all know, when they say in the second act of Siegfried that Hagen, who's of course the Rheingold / the ring, and Siegfried overthrow their fathers by Hagen killing Mime and Siegfried killing Fafner. So it's kind of this situation. And they overthrow their father figures. But never mind. So, yay. Also, it's probably the best. We could also include Wotan and Siegfried as father and son, because also Wotan calls him his son, which is probably what the current production of Bayreuth is based upon, with their notion that maybe or not Wotan is Siegfried's father. But we're not going to include this now because Siegfried doesn't see him as his dad. And they don't have really that much time with each other anyway. So, then we only have one piece left, which is Parsifal. And again, Parsifal and Tannhäuser are the ones that I know the least about. So, if I make anything wrong, drag me. So, who do we have? We have Gunimans. Gunimans is basically... Well, we have Titurel, don't we? Yeah, Titurel, but he's as good as dead, as we know. Don't we? Yeah. Titurel is like only kept alive by the Grail, so we're not really counting him. But we will count Gunimans. And obviously, we have this guy with a father figure. Not girl with a father figure, so we have to look at this from a different angle. Obviously, Gunimans doesn't sell Parsifal anywhere, but he initially takes him under his wing and he cares for him and he says, yeah, I'm going to show you the Grail, I'm going to show you what you've done wrong and this stuff before he throws him out, before Gunimans throws Parsifal out, because Parsifal is too... well, stupid to understand what he's seeing. So, do we call it tough love or... yeah, never mind. So, we have Gunimans throwing Parsifal out. We're also not including Klingsor as kind of a father figure for Kundry, because I don't think that's their dynamic. He sells her off, but that doesn't mean he has to be a father. Siegfried also sells Brunhilde off, so he's not her father, he's her nephew. And in the third act, Gunimans helps Parsifal like a lot with finding who he is and finding where he has to go back and finding his true meaning in life. So I suppose that Gunimans is kind of better. Before he gets Kundry and Parsifal back to the Holy Grail, where she dies. And she should die, because she's Christian and she doesn't say a word. She's the first woman to see this. So, these were the father figures. So, who are the best father figures in this? If we're talking about women, it's probably, honestly, Veit Pogner who takes the cake. And and maybe Darlan, because they actually asked their daughters before selling them off. Yay! Isn't it great? They don't sell them off just to anyone without asking them. You could also argue that, of course, Heinrich der Vogler from Lohengrin, that he let her make her own decision in saying, yes, I want to marry you, and that he didn't say, oh, wait, we're going to make a contract and you're going to ask me. You're not asking her for her hand in marriage, but you're asking me. But still, the bar is pretty low for, like, father figures for women. He asked her before selling her off. Yay! Wonderful, great. Then we get to, like, best father figures for the guys, which I think is probably, well, let's say it like this. Marke has more of this passive role. He is not really active until the very end of the piece. And we have Gurnemans, who has this tough love approach of throwing Parsifal out, which obviously ultimately leads him to go to Klingsor to ask for the spear back. So, spare, which might have been the right way. But yeah, I think these are probably the best two guy dads or father figures. In the realm of the worst father figures, we have Wotan and we have Mime. Wotan, obviously, we have talked about this long enough, very, very long, about what Wotan did to his children, both girls and boys. And we talked about that Mime wanted to kill his son. So, bar is pretty low. Okay. But, yeah, I would say these are the best and the worst father figures in Wagner's works. I don't think this video will have that many clicks on it, because I know you're only interested in deaths, which I totally get. It's the best part. Let's be real. Who cares about the marriages? But what I care about are the mother figures, because they are my women. Fricka, Magdalene. We're gonna have them marry, of course. Mary, my favorite. And by my favorite, I mean she was kind of the figure that I actually fell in love with when I saw The Dutchman for the first time. The Dutchman was my first, and I didn't really like Center, but I loved Mary a lot. Also, if you remember that I said that Capet is not my actual last name, but a nod to my actual real first name, then you know why I like Mary so much. So, this was it for the father figures. Thank you so much if you're still here. Thank you. Drop something in the comments. Just, I don't know, tell me to see Tannhäuser again. Yay. Or something. I don't know. Would be nice to hear from you. Have a nice day. Bye.